This is a story of manipulation, deception, bloodlust, a predator. This is a story of an extremely vulnerable victim, a story about mental health, lack of self-worth.
In August 2012, 36-year-old Elaine O'Hara, who was a woman with a troubled past, vanished from her home in Dublin, Ireland. The investigation into her disappearance quickly hit dead ends, especially after a misleading lead pointed detectives in the wrong direction. False clues and false assumptions left the case stagnant for years, with no new leads to follow. But as time went on, shocking revelations would emerge, and a disturbing truth about Elaine's fate would finally come to light. Who was responsible for her disappearance, and what dark secrets were buried beneath the surface? Let's jump right into it.
Looking for help in trying to track down a missing person. Yeah, Elaine O'Hara, she's been missing for just over a month now. She went missing on the 22nd of August. We have found Elaine's car, but it hasn't given us any clues as to Elaine's whereabouts at the moment. She's about 5'4", she's 36 years of age.
Elaine O'Hara was born on March 17, 1976, in Dublin, Ireland. And from a young age, life wasn't easy for her. She struggled with depression, anxiety, and self-harm, which made her feel lonely and misunderstood. She was a quiet and introverted person who found it difficult to open up to others about what she was going through. School was tough for her, and she faced bullying that only made her feel more isolated. As Elaine grew older, her emotional struggles didn't get any easier. After finishing school at St. Joseph of Cluny, she was diagnosed with depression and borderline personality disorder. Elaine faced significant mental health challenges, but she also struggled with asthma, diabetes, and dyslexia. These conditions made her feel even more isolated and different from those around her. It seemed like every part of her life came with an added difficulty, and it wasn't easy for her to find a way out of it all.
I knew she had mental health issues. We didn't have a name or a diagnosis of what was actually the issue with her. We knew that when she got very stressed, or say coming up to exams, or any time there was any bit of pressure on her, she seemed to return to the hospital.
Elaine's family loved her, but they didn't always understand what she was going through. Her relationship with her father was tough, which made her feel isolated and lonely. While her family did their best to help, it was hard for them to fully grasp the depth of her struggles. Back then, mental health wasn't something people talked about openly, and asking for help wasn't as easy as it is today. Elaine's life became harder in 2002 with the loss of her mother. In 2007, she faced another blow with the unexpected death of her psychiatrist named Professor Anthony Clare. These losses increased her sadness and left her feeling abandoned. In search of independence, Elaine moved out of her family home in 2005, first to Blackrock, then to a more affordable flat in Stepaside. Despite her mental health struggles, Elaine worked as a childcare assistant and part-time at newsagents. She also pursued her dream of becoming a Montessori teacher by taking night classes. Despite facing emotional pain, personal losses, and health challenges, Elaine kept pushing forward, but her struggles ultimately left her vulnerable to a tragic relationship, which was a turning point in her life.
A more vulnerable person to prey on, because Elaine would have been just delighted of the attention that she was receiving from him, regardless of it being such a bad attention or whatever. But she would have been delighted with it. She was just looking for love, really, that's it.
On August 22nd, 2012, Elaine O'Hara went missing from her home, and at first, it seemed like just another case of someone disappearing. Initially, her family thought she might have gone missing while volunteering at the tall ships races in Dublin. But when they checked her house, they found something strange. Her purse, bag, and phone were all left behind, and security footage showed her leaving the house with a different phone altogether. This raised serious concerns, and her family reported her missing. Elaine was last seen by a jogger in Shanganagh Park, which is located just south of Shankill in the county of Dun Laoghaire Rathdown. At first, the assumption was that she had simply wandered off, or maybe gone somewhere, to clear her mind. But as the days passed and the investigation deepened, it became clear that something more disturbing had occurred.
This is Shangana Park, the place where Elaine O'Hara was last seen alive on the evening of August 22nd, 2012. She was seen by a jogger who'd given her directions, heading for this railway bridge and heading in the direction of the shore.
It was later determined that Elaine had made her way to Shangana Cemetery, where her mother was buried. A witness reported hearing a woman crying loudly in the graveyard. The woman seemed to fit Elaine's general description, but the witness couldn't confirm her identity. Her car was found nearby. Because of her past mental health struggles, many believed Elaine might have taken her own life by jumping off the nearby cliffs. No new information had come to light, and the investigation continued at a steady pace. With each passing day, the search for her grew more uncertain.
It is the same area where Antoinette Smith was found, and also its proximity to Johnny Fox's pub meant that there was hopes were raised for Annie McCarrick's family. She's been missing since 1993.
On September 10th, 2013, just 3 days before the discovery of O'Hara's body, his brother, named anglers William Fegan and another man, were at Vartree Reservoir near Roundwood, County Wicklow. While fishing, they spotted a bag floating in the shallow water. Normally, the water here was deep, like around 15 to 20 feet. But after an unusually long hot spell, the water had receded, which left it just 12 to 18 inches deep.
An extremely dry summer, and the reservoir levels are dictated by the weather and the water use within Dublin. So it was the lowest I'd ever encountered it. And then eventually I snagged it.
This exposed the bag and its contents, which would normally have been submerged. Inside the bag, they found handcuffs, clothing, a ball gag, restraints and leg cuffs.
A couple of sets of handcuffs and leg restraints on it. And next thing we found a mask. It was just a leather strap basically that went around and came around this way and then down, and there was a ball that's placed in your mouth.
The next day, Fagan handed the items over to Roundwood Garda Station. Garda James O'Donoghue led a series of searches at the site, and on September 16th, he discovered even more items like handcuffs, keys, a leather mask, a knife, an inhaler, and a chain with a ring attached. A Dunnes Stores loyalty card found on the keyring was traced back to O'Hara.
Yes, this is Officer O'Donoghue. I need an ID check on a loyalty card.
From that, they were able to identify these keys belonged to Elaine O'Hara.
Elaine O'Hara, thank you. So I need a name check on Elaine O'Hara.
The Garda Water Unit then conducted further searches on September 17th and October 7th, 2013. They recovered 2 Nokia phones, 2 batteries, a pair of glasses and sunglasses, and a rucksack. One of the glasses was matched to O'Hara's prescription records at a Specsavers in Dun Laoghaire. It was a turning point.
Favourable, and I was able to observe a number of items, or I was able to observe an item in the water, which was what I recognise to be a part of a set of handcuffs partially submerged.
Magali Vergnet, who was a dog trainer, often took dogs for walks through the wooded land near Killarkey, which is located in the foothills of the Dublin Mountains. Starting in late August 2013, one of her dogs began regularly returning from their walks with bones in its mouth. At first, Vernier assumed the bones were from some animal, perhaps a deer or other wildlife native to the area. However, on September 13th, the dog returned again, this time with more bones and strangely with pieces of clothing.
She sees me with an unusually large bone in her mouth. It was absolutely harrowing.
Oh my God.
Feeling uneasy, Vernier started to suspect that the bones might be human. She contacted the landowner, named Frank Doyle, to discuss her concerns. The two of them, along with another man, decided to go back to the area and investigate further. They made their way to an isolated clearing in the woods where they found more bones scattered across the ground. Some of the bones had been chewed, which suggested they might have been there for a while. Among the remains, they found a rib cage and a jawbone, which led them to realize that the bones they had discovered were human.
Jawbone was found at the scene, and it was compared with Elaine O'Hara's records, and it was an exact match.
Realizing the gravity of the situation, they immediately alerted the Gardaí. When authorities arrived, they began a thorough search of the area. Despite their efforts, only about 65% of the body was recovered. The remains were later identified as those of O'Hara through dental records, which confirmed the worst fears.
Covered 60 to 65% of remains.
In late 2007, police began to discover disturbing details about Elaine O'Hara's personal life and relationship. O'Hara had visited the fetish website alt.com and used the profile name HelpMeLearn36/F, where she viewed the profile of Architect 72. This was traced back to Dwyer, who was an architect and was behind the username linked to a Gmail account named Fetish Boy. Dwyer had no criminal history and came from a family with no notable background.
Well, the challenge here was to create an individual look around a standard white bathroom suite. So the approach I took was a modern one, using just simple geometry and colour for effect.
Born on September 13th, 1972, in Bandon, County Cork, he had 3 siblings. After secondary school, he moved to Dublin in the early 1990s and studied architecture at Dublin Institute of Technology. He began a relationship with Éama McShea, who later became pregnant, but their relationship ended in 1996. Dwyer then married Gemma Healy in 2002, and they settled in Foxrock. His career as an architect flourished, and by 2006, he was made a director at A&D, Whiteshirt and Partners Architects.
Technology was a central part of this investigation, and masts like this one on top of the ESB head office in Dublin City were core to the prosecution case. Graham Dwyer worked just around the corner on Bagot Street.
He worked on major projects like Carlow Institute of Technology and Leopardstown Racecourse. His personal interests included flying radio-controlled aircraft and driving luxury cars. However, by the time of O'Hara's murder, Dwyer was facing financial difficulties, which included large debts and a significant reduction in his salary due to the economic downturn. It became clear that O'Hara and Dwyer had developed a deeply troubling relationship, one that involved intense sexual activities, including bondage, violence, and the use of knives. Their bond was far from ordinary, and their relationship stretched throughout much of 2008. Investigators found disturbing evidence on their laptops, which included homemade sex videos and disturbing email exchanges that presented a clear picture of the dark dynamics between them. At some point, their relationship seemed to vanish, and it was reinitiated in March 2011 when Dwyer reached out to O'Hara through a prepaid mobile phone. The police were able to trace both of their phone numbers, including O'Hara's starting with 086 and Dwyer's with 083. Through recovered text messages from discarded phones, police found a series of distressing conversations. Dwyer, using the name Master, exchanged texts with O'Hara, who was referred to as Slave. These texts revealed the ongoing psychological control Dwyer had over her. "I want to stick my knife in the flesh while I am sexually aroused. I would like to stab a girl to death sometime." Graham Dwyer, text from 083 phone, June 2011. "My urge to rape, stab or kill is huge. You have to help me control or satisfy it." Graham Dwyer, text from 083 phone, 2011.
"Are you happy going on like this forever? Sir, please stop. I will get in trouble if I don't do it at this stage. It's suicide. No one will look into it."
As investigators dug deeper, they began to piece together a disturbing timeline. Phone records, emails, and witness statements all pointed to Dwyer as the central figure in Elaine's disappearance. What seemed like a missing person case quickly revealed a scary and premeditated act of violence. Elaine's disappearance was no accident, and it had been carefully planned. Dwyer had controlled and manipulated her for months, even years, and tricked her into going to a remote spot outside Dublin. This isolated spot had been deliberately chosen to ensure no one could intervene. It was clear that this was no spur-of-the-moment act of violence, and it was premeditated, calculated, and deliberate.
Detected in this general area. One was the 083 phone, which had re-established contact with Elaine O'Hara in March 2011. The other, the 086 master phone, which had been in contact with her on the day that she disappeared.
Evidence from O'Hara's phone and laptop led to a search of Dwyer's house, where more incriminating material was found. Dwyer was arrested, and he initially denied knowing O'Hara, but security footage and forensic evidence contradicted him. The trial began on January 22, 2015. It revealed violent homemade sex videos and emails detailing Dwyer's use of bondage, violence, and knives. O'Hara had also received repeated threats from Dwyer to stab and kill her. Dwyer's defense argued there was no direct evidence linking him to O'Hara's death. They pointed to her history of depression and speculated that she might have died by suicide. They also suggested that Dwyer's violent language was merely sexual fantasy and not evidence of intent to kill. However, the prosecution argued that the evidence showed a deliberate plan by Dwyer to murder O'Hara. They pointed out that Dwyer manipulated O'Hara's vulnerability and that she had repeatedly expressed fear of being hurt by him. The prosecution also highlighted Dwyer's actions to hide evidence, which included O'Hara's personal belongings and mobile phones, as clear proof of his intent to kill. On March 27, 2015, Dwyer was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. Dwyer's legal team challenged the use of mobile phone data in his trial and argued that European court rulings invalidated the laws governing data retention. In 2021, the European Court of Justice ruled mobile phone metadata could only be retained for national security, not criminal investigations, which impacted cases like Dwyer's. In 2022, the ECJ declared indiscriminate data retention violated EU law, which prompted a review of Dwyer's case and potential legislative changes. However, in March 2023, the Court of Appeal dismissed his appeal, and in July 2024, the Supreme Court upheld the admissibility of the mobile phone evidence, which left Dwyer to continue serving his life sentence. Elaine O'Hara's tragic death highlights the dangers of emotional manipulation and the complexities of relationships. Her story is one of pain and control, but also a reminder that behind every case of abuse is a person who deserves support and the chance to escape before it's too late. Though her case ended in tragedy, it serves as a warning to society to recognize the signs of toxic relationships and take action.
Elaine was a human being. She had some very, very good qualities, and all that has been shown is the negative side of Elaine's knife. She was a human being that still deserved to be respected. Her life was worth something.